Welcome to the Global Business Review. I am Joy Onka. Newspapers are an essential component of the Nigerian news landscape since the pre-independent days, but their revenues have declined as almost 100 million Nigerians access the internet and consume news digitally. The industry's financial and subscriber base has become shaky even as website audience traffic has grown for many of the newspaper brands. Now, in this second edition of the two-part series, we're focusing on the newspaper patterns of news consumption and their effect on revenues of traditional news audiences. Stay with us as we explore the patterns and data about the Nigerian newspaper industry and its implications. With me in the studio is senior VWS analyst Lekon Fakoyejo as he gives us more insights on the story. Lekon, you're welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Lekon, now the number of internet users in terms of accessing news in Nigeria is growing astronomically. And like I said earlier on, we have over 100 million Nigerians accessing news from online platforms rather than the newspapers, which has always been the case in the past. Welcome back. You're still watching Pryde Television, and this is the Global Business Review. And I still have with me VWS Senior Analyst Lekon Fakoyejo, and we're looking at
dollars this year, indicating a gradual adoption of online marketplace by consumers. Welcome to Mobile 10.x, a program that examines the impact of technology and, in particular, mobile technology and devices on the Nigerian economy. I am Ifeoluwa Orimoloye, your regular host. This edition is a continuation of our series on the analysis of the Nigerian Media Outlook 2017. In this edition, we are taking a look at M-commerce and the Nigerian customers. Bid for Qualcomm on national security grounds and Byte nominated directors from joining its board. However, Qualcomm last week said its board would shrink to 10 directors from 11 because former chairman Paul Jacobs, the son of Qualcomm's co-founder, would not be renominated for the board after disclosing his intention to pursue an acquisition of the firm. Qualcomm did not disclose on Friday how many votes its directors received at the annual meeting. Its shares were down 1.2% at $54.93 in midday trading. Dropbox Incorporated shares soared by as much as 50% in their first day of trading on Friday as investors rushed to buy into the biggest technology initial public offering in more than a year. Even as the wider tech sector languished, Dropbox's much-awaited debut marks an end to a long dry spell in the US IPO market for big names in the technology sector. The last so-called tech unicorn to hit the market was Snapchat owner Snap Incorporated last March, and it is trading roughly 4% below its $17 IPO price. The San Francisco-based company, which started as a free service to share and store photos, music, and other large files, competes with much larger technology firms such as Alphabet Incorporated's Google, Microsoft Corp, and Amazon Incorporated, and also with Box Incorporated. It has yet to turn a profit, but that's common for startups that invest heavily in their growth. However, as a public company, Dropbox will be under pressure to quickly trim its losses. That is how far we can go on trending news in the world of technology.
For the English Premiership club side Tottenham Hotspur, the 2018-2019 football season marks the beginning of a new era. After 118 years, the club will move into its brand new 62,000-plus capacity stadium, located exactly where the old one used to be. But why exactly does Tottenham need a new stadium? We'll explain why in a minute. This is Sports and Money. Welcome back. This is the new White Hart Lane. It will be the new home of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club from the 2018-2019 football season. Moving into the stadium is a culmination of a 17-year quest by the club under the leadership of its chairman Daniel Levy, not just to become but also remain one of Europe's leading club sides. But what does it mean to become one of Europe's leading club sides? It's all about the money. According to the Deloitte Football Money Report, based on 3 factors all measured from 2015 to 2017, here are some reasons why Tottenham wants to become one of Europe's leading club sides. Matchday revenue, average attendance per game, matchday revenue per person. Let's begin with 2015. In 2015, despite having a matchday revenue per person that was in excess of £1,200, Tottenham Hotspur was ranked 11th amongst European football clubs in terms of matchday revenue. This happened because the size of the football club's matchday revenue is determined by the capacity of the stadium and how much fans spend on each matchday. So, in 2015, while Tottenham fans spent enough to rival any top European club on match days, the capacity of its stadium, which was less than 40,000, was a limiting factor to its breaking into the top 10 revenue bracket of European football. Join us after this break as we take a look at what happened to the club's revenue in 2016.
This is the life. This is the place you wanna go. This is the time to see the world you never know. This is the life. This is the life. This is the dream. This is the wish. This is the child that you don't ever want. This is the life.
Welcome back. This situation remained the same in 2016 as the high-spending Tottenham fans could not lift their club into the top 10 of European clubs as judged by matchday revenue. To make matters worse, its revenue aspirations were dented when the club's disappointment matchday revenue dropped from £43.9 million to £41.2 million. Results for 2017 have proved no different, as matchday revenue slid further to £40.8 million. And the solution? Build a new higher capacity stadium. Up next, since the fans were already spending significantly like any other top 10 club fan, a larger stadium would get more fans in and raise matchday revenue. To understand how the new stadium would positively impact on the club's revenue, let's even imagine that the fans do not increase their matchday spending. That is, matchday spending is left at £1,200. This is a difference. 62,000 fans spending £1,200 would give Tottenham Hotspur a matchday revenue of £89 million, nearly £50 million higher than the previous figures. Based on matchday revenue for top 10 European clubs in 2017, matchday revenue of £89 million would put the club in 4th place, ahead of German giants Bayern Munich, who recorded £76 million, and just behind Barcelona, who recorded £90 million. When we return, we take a look at how a bigger stadium has repositioned the club in Europe.
This is the life.
let me speak on a general basis. There are like 6 factors that, even though independent, they must all operate together if you are going to be successful. Now, the first thing is finance. There is equity, there is debt. If you look at the industry generally today, most of the assets have been financed through debt. And from the day you borrow, you start paying interest. The next thing is people. There is a shortage of trained manpower, whether in production, script writing, camera work. There is a shortage of professionals in the industry, sharing it between the TV houses, the production houses, the movie producers. You generally find a low level of human capacity in this industry. Now, the other thing is the legal protection surrounding the intellectual property. It's not so well defined. The number 4 thing you would have to look at is access to platforms. Most people go out to create their own platforms because you don't easily have access, whether it's free to air TV or pay TV, or even online, you have to build the servers. So when you look at these things, generally most players have 1 or 2. They don't have all of it. Now, if you continue to play in the industry, what you find is that the largest players are government subsidized. So these are the challenges. They can afford to make mistakes and not pay anything, but you can't as private individuals or private participators in this industry. So that's the kind of risk we are speaking about around those 4 or 5 factors. The better we can reduce the risk around those things, you know. And in closing, let me just put it this way. Over the years, when you look at the educational curriculum of Nigerian universities, I don't think there's a university that offers cinematography. I don't think there's a university that offers photography. So what you generally find is people graduate from theater arts and then jump into production and the likes of it. If you take a census of all the industry professionals, you'll be amazed from the various disciplines from which they have crossed into without any formal training. And this is not the case in other developed climes, which is why communities like Kenya have overtaken us.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just swinging over to BB because DK talked about debt rather than equity, but I know that you made a couple of films, and was that really all debt financed, or were you able to raise equity?
Good morning or afternoon. My name is BB. As you're aware, I was wrongly co-opted onto this panel, so forgive whatever information. With all due apologies, I almost completely disagree with most of what Mr. DK said. First, most films are financed by investment, not debt, overwhelmingly. Secondly, there is a big dearth in capacity. He's absolutely right about that. But world over, the creative industry is not a trained profession. Creative industries are people who overwhelmingly teach themselves. That's the way creative industries thrive. There's people who go through formal training, but as a measure of success, it's apples to oranges. Some of the best filmmakers, some of the most successful filmmakers, most of the most successful filmmakers don't have formal training, whether it be graphic design, photography, filmmaking. And it's not to say we don't need to build capacity. A lot of the middle management, a lot of the middle level skill sets need formal training. So that's extremely imperative. But the skill set is a talent skill set. It's not something that you specifically have to go get formal training for. The other thing is, I don't know how many people finance their pictures. I wish I knew. I look at certain people around the room and I want to know their secret of how they are. You hear they're making films every year, and I want to know how these people are making films every year. But I do think you would know best, sir. Money makes money. I do think there needs to be a decisive effort by investment banks, consultants, Mr. Moderator, lawyers, a bunch of these humongous sectors that come together to create financing for big infrastructural investments. if we wanted to put a nuclear plant in Nigeria tomorrow, you, who may not necessarily have all the information about it, would take 3 months and do a bunch of research. Then you sit to Mr. DK. You guys will figure out whether it's a moratorium for 5 years, some sort of debt financing, some sort, and you'll figure everything out. And there will be a nuclear plant with $300 million of financing, which is completely untrusted, untested, no information about it in this space in the next 5 years. But the entertainment field that has shown you repeatedly success, potential, all kinds of, capacity that's being built out of thin air. I mean, in the 90s, the Nollywood market came from nowhere. Like, they built it out of thin air. And yet, some sort of slow, I don't know what it is. There's a thing that affects us in Africa when it comes to investments. Our parents suffer from it. We're starting to suffer from it. We only want to invest in things that we're certain of. And that, to me, sort of goes against the grain of investment. I'm not a finance guy, so I'm sure there needs to be and I'm sure there needs to be a very strong sense of not just potential, but actual translation and conversion to money. But I do believe that if a concerted effort is made by the people with the understanding of finance, the people with the brains behind it, to say, this is what when MTN came in, there was no telco. Absolutely. So I throw it back to you guys that there is product on ground, and you guys have to do the work of figuring out distribution and infrastructure and capacity building and all those things to be able to invest in it, because the product is here.
Good. You see why I call baby now. You see why I call. Very good. Thank you. But I'll flip it to Kenneth, and you'll touch on those points. But to add village people, just to kind of add a bit of context as well. While you're responding to these things, do you think the industry has done enough to also showcase itself that there's significant potential or there's sufficient potential to attract the kind of investment we're looking at, in addition to other comments?
So I think, like with most things, we can always do more. But I sit on the desk of people who identify that the industry isn't where it used to be. So there has been obviously significant growth, and that growth hasn't been done in isolation of just the beneficiaries of the growth. And so if I was to speak on what Bibi said, I think Bibi touched on quite a lot of points. I have to agree with Bibi on some of the elements that he disagreed with what Dickie said. But I would say to Bibi that it has happened. And I think that Mrs. Uche can speak a little bit to what BOI has done and the role they've played in this industry. And it's actually quite apt because we're beneficiaries of that exact point you made. And I would agree that there is a role for the financiers and for the consultants to play. It is less about investing, but more about creating an environment where investors have confidence to invest in. If I speak just back a few years when Mrs. Uche just sat down with us to fund our very first cinema opening in Sulere. It was exactly that. Zero collateral. The bank obviously demonstrated a willingness to understand the business, which was very different from what they'd done before, and was happy to share in the risk of going in. So I agree that there should be so much more of that happening. And I think that it's also important to tell those stories so that we celebrate those who have taken the step, but we also shame those who haven't. And so I'd agree with quite a number of things that they both said, but I do think that it has happened. We just need to do more and speak about it a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do we have any other comments from anybody on the panel on this issue before I change direction?
You should do more. You should do more.
We should do more.
You should do more.
I should do more.
Yes. PwC should do more, right? And let me sorry, just 1 second. The reason why I say you should do more, and I know that you're representing PwC, and Chijoke does great in his individual capacity, and I think that the industry benefits from having someone like Chijoke play his role. But I do believe that, like Bibi said, a lot of these partners, whether they be financial partners or consultants or R&D, can help to create the environment that investors. I think, like someone said before, this environment and investing in this industry isn't new, and it isn't peculiar to just Nigeria. In a lot of other markets, they see a ton of investment, but I think it is born from a place of confidence. And so people like PwC are in a position to instill the confidence in the financiers to continue to provide more investments. I think that the industry at large could benefit from. So Chidokwe, we look forward to you doing more.
So absolutely, and I think Kene, you made a very good point, and I would say PwC is one of the very few of the consulting firms out there that has actually invested in the sector. I'm sure you'd see our media and entertainment outlook, which is something we publish on a yearly basis. It's almost like an investor's Bible. But the problem, which we've always talked about, is you need the real data that would speak to the real issues. And the more investors, global investors, local investors, start seeing the kind of positive outlooks that we're putting out there about the industry, it creates that level of confidence. But there has to be data. There has to be real data that they can look at, work with. And these are things that, watch this space. There are a couple of things in the pipeline that we're also looking to do around that. But it's also a collaborative effort. So it's not about saying consultants, financiers, but the industry practitioners themselves, the exhibitors, the producers. Everybody would be successful if we open up this industry in such a way that it's no longer that gray area. They say, these Nollywood people. At the AMVCA the other day, they said, all the big guys like sitting in front. The question is, what do they see the industry as? Do they see the industry as glitz, glamour, and all we need to do is come and hang out with the stars? Or do they see the industry as a place where they can put their dollars into that would make them a lot of money? That they'll put their naira into that'll make them a lot of money. The way I started it, stock market down, treasury bills, money market not doing that great. The property market is not what it used to be. Why are we not putting our money into this industry? And the major reason why is because it's always been a gray area. And then the success stories are not told. So what you talk to a film producer, the first thing he tells you is how much money he lost in the cinemas. He tells you how much, no, forget it, that he's lost so much money. And then the question is this: where are the positive stories? Does anybody ever make money in film in Nigeria?
Yes.
Because, I hear you, but I'm saying you hardly hear people publicizing that I made 2x of my investment. I made 3x of my investment. You have people that have put money into films, and I know some of them have even spoken to me, and they say, I don't know, I haven't seen anything. Nobody has communicated anything to me. I'm not even sure if, my money is going to come back. And these are factual things. So the question is, how much do we even celebrate the successes? How much do we put it out there that I made a film for 40 million and he made 80 million? I think there has to be a bit more positivity around the stories we tell about the industry. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we'll move it to the next. I'm moderator, don't ask me a question again. And then, sorry, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just to give a background about Bank of Industry and what we did when we started. We didn't just come into the industry directly. I'm an investment banker. My background was more of treasury and capital market and high net worth management. But then when I was moved to the creative industry section, what we did was to partner with British Council to understand the industry and to understand what they've done in the UK to be able to grow the industry. We didn't just work with British Council, we also worked with stakeholders in the industry who gave us a lot of information. And after the first meetings, we had a study tour. The study tour led to Industry Expo, and a mapping was also done about the industry. We also organize capacity building for different sections in Abuja, Lagos, and Benin. BOI continued to engage with stakeholders in the industry. After the study tour, the report we got from the organizers, those that took us out, was that it was a very risky sector, that we should assume that 99% of our investment will be lost. But interestingly, my report got in before theirs, and our report from the bank was different. And we had an MD then that believed strongly in the creative industry. When I saw the copy of the result from the would-be professionals in the industry, I was a bit jittery, but I was happy I didn't see it before submitting mine. Because I looked at those in the industry, those that were using their funding, and we were told that we can use 3 funding means to fund projects within the industry: equity, grant, and debt. And we believed that BOI could come in after you've brought out your equity and probably sourced grants to support your project. So the funding from BOI will now be the gap funding to support your project. That was how we started. We did a lot of engagement. We still discussed further. Even when the first 2 projects were approved and we felt we needed to have more people, we engaged more people in the industry. And that was how the birth of Nolly Fund came to be. Nolly Fund was a baby of Gaboski. He sold that idea to us with a team of 12 other professionals in the industry. That was how we came about that. BOI, irrespective of our experience, we are still engaging. We want to do more, but we know that the sector is highly risky, but we also believe that the creative industry in Nigeria, the stakeholders there are actually outliers. You people have done so well, but we need to do more. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I always like when Uche speaks. She's very calming, and she always gives this air that everything will be okay. Anyways, just kind of moving from there, because I keep hearing about de-risking, risk. But then the question: so what are those real risks? Now, we talk about from there because I keep hearing, or is it the cost of producing? Is it distribution outlets? What are these real issues, and where should we really be focusing on to actually help de-risk and build more confidence? And I'm going to go to Obe.
Okay, I think when we talk about investor confidence, there are 2 ways to look at, or financing generally. So I speak purely from a finance perspective. If I am funding a film, for example, or funding a cinema or whatever with my own money, and a bank is funding it, there are 2 different cases. I think that generally we've come through the last few years with a lot of personal financing, people losing money, or people making just about enough. It's very different from, so before I answer your question, just speaking to some of the things we've been speaking about. So it's very different from a bank actually giving you money where there are terms. So I like the way BB spoke. BB spoke with a lot of passion of a filmmaker, and but really at the end of the day, and I was expecting, I thought Madam Muche would tell us some of her experiences, in funding films. It's really been terrible. So you sort of have to put things in perspective, and there has to be a way, which is why this sort of meetings are important. Some of the quick ways that I think this can be improved is the data. Some of what we're trying to do at the Cinema Association of Nigeria to say, look, make data available for everybody so you can make informed decisions. Sometimes a film is out and, filmmakers or promoters have gone out to say the film has done, X millions in the first, in the opening weekend. And I'm looking at my figures, I'm like, come on, how is this even possible? Then they put a caveat and say, including private screenings. Now, who is going to check, what do you get what I'm saying? So that transparency will go a long way to encourage investors. I can't also resist the opportunity to also say that the exhibition space is a space that requires a lot more investment. I mean, I think that some of the progress we've made in the last few years is also a function of the increase in screens. I think it's because at the end of the day, you need an outlet to get that money out. Okay, once the investor is not sure where the money is going to come out, then there's going to be a problem. And I think the Bank of Industry has done an amazing job in the last few years. Funding cinemas. Genesis has been a major beneficiary of some of the funding. However, we're still. So if I even compare what we're doing with what happens abroad, we're still very far behind. So I'll give you an example. All we're trying to build here cinemas to international standard, and everything that we build is 90% of what we do is imported, and that's the reality. Not because that's what we want to do, but because the key elements that give you that experience is not within our control. You have to import it. So we're also exposed to the dollar risks and all those factors and importation and cost and duties and so on and so forth. Now we're building the same standard as the cinemas abroad, but we're spending 3 times the money because of all the factors I've just mentioned. When you want to build a cinema abroad and you want to change out your projectors, they will give you 20-year loans, 10 years, 15 years. They give you facilities to enable you to make some of those changes. And they charge higher than we charge. So the terrain is a lot easier. So in our own environment, we also are still faced with these challenges. And until we're able to find solutions to some of those problems, it will continue to be difficult. Every now and then we would have the Bank of Industries and the grants who are able to make things easier for us. But ultimately, the exhibition space, there has got to be a lot more investment in the exhibition space. Exhibitors have got to be able to access a lot more funding to be able to expand, because when your cost of setup is high, really, what can you do? Because at the end of the day, you have to pay back.
But I mean, good stuff. Good stuff. But so when we look at the other countries and what has happened, so what role do we think maybe the government could play in this, in terms of driving this industry forward? Because we've heard about government intervention in manufacturing, in oil and gas, in banking. So the creative industry. So what kind of structured intervention can we have? I mean, BOI for me seems to be like short term. I'm not sure BOI will be in the position, and please answer me, Uche, if I'm wrong, to actually drive the kind of growth we're looking for in the industry. We're probably, depending on who you listen to, we're probably looking at over the next 8 years, we need to spend at least $1 billion to drive this industry. And this is not something you would keep on a BOI. That's on one side. There are policies, government policies. How do the government policies impact the filmmakers? I'm importing equipment for what I'm doing. When I import equipment for gas utilization, I get all sorts of government rebates. When I want to import equipment for filmmaking, is there any kind of rebate I get? Do I get tax rebates? Do I get other rebates that allow me to do what I need to do? So what do you think would be the government's role in this? I'm going to throw this open. Anybody can pick it up.
Okay, so I mean, the simple answer to the question is we don't have any of those rebates or those, I mean, it doesn't have those incentives, and that's the reality. I mean, so what the Bank of Industry is doing has helped a lot, and that you can consider as a major incentive. Okay, but there's a lot more that needs to be done for us to even be able to compete with the people who are with the developed economies. But I would allow.
My little contribution to this will be for the industry to come together. Advocacy role. How do you push this issue of incentive? I know we've been discussing this formally and informally within the industry, but have we been able to move? We should use all the bodies within the government that oversee creative industry to be able to push this. Advocacy role will help us reverse or get what we intend to get. Yes, BOI cannot provide all the funding, But I know that from 2011 when we started, BOI has really continued to increase the funding available to the industry. We just disbursed close to 6 billion for content production, but we're doing structured content support now. Nolly Fund was like one project request and a one project support. We have started in Bank of Industry. We have the funding to support businesses within the industry, but we need more opportunities also from other banks to support what we're doing in Bank of Industry.
Which
Thank
is
you.
why I would want to talk to DK now to say most banks have programs around small and medium scale enterprises, single digit type of interest loans, and just all sorts of programs to support small and medium scale enterprises. Given that most of us here are SMEs, right? Or we qualify as SMEs. Can you speak to us from the banking side why this whole focus shouldn't also be this creative industry and look at more user-friendly interest rates, considering that they're SMEs?
Okay. When I discovered that Uche would be on this panel, I just felt, look, there's no point going there. We really operate on that different spaces. But sincerely, yes, I need to explain, in a sense, how bankers think. And I don't mean like development bankers, commercial bankers, how we think. We think in terms of the economics. And a good example is this. He made an allusion to if there was going to be a gas plant or something, right? We'll put heads together and raise $300 million. The original equipment manufacturer of the gas plant, let's say GE, would probably have received some heavy subsidy from the United States government, which will allow us to benefit. And the corollary of that is this. The industry is very granular, okay, in the sense that, look, you have cameras, very limited. You can't gross that up to be something like in 300 million. So assuming we all come together and go to a Sony or any other original equipment manufacturer with the government and say, look, we're going to put down a guarantee of $500 million so that we can provide equipment, original equipment for many of our producers. And then you now break these producers into the small businesses you're making reference to. Because, frankly, money is expensive. I don't think there's any commercial bank that gives sub double-digit interest rates. There is really none. Even the money BOI gets, they get from Afrexim and the other people. So that's one point I'd like to make. Now, the whole idea about small business, interestingly, from my own experience, the small businesses don't like being called small businesses. Some entities take offense at being classified as, small businesses. They take offense. But what really makes you a small business is actually that you need support. And frankly, from a commercial banking perspective, it's unlikely that you can get that kind of support. Because what you need, like Uche mentioned, that three-step approach. You get funds first, from family and friends. Then you get from outside crowdsourcing and all of that before you get to the commercial banking space. But to cut a long story short, there have been several attempts, officially and unofficially, to build small businesses. And they really haven't succeeded because there are larger issues at stake here, which relate to power, which relate to exchange rates that are outside your control. And lastly, I still want to emphasize something about subsidies. Some of us have been privileged to go for American Film Festival, American Film Market, and the other one that holds in Nice in France. You see local governments, municipal governments actually promoting their resources and subsidizing film promotion in their regions. trying to attract investors, trying to attract producers. This is very vital. If you don't have that government, whether regional, state, or central support, it's going to be tough. At the end of the day, money has to be paid out. And the lower the cost of this fund, the better. Everybody has intervention. So it's not a one-person thing. It's an entire value chain that we must all recognize that it's a lot of effort. And the theatrical aspect of it is a real estate play. It takes you how many years to build a cinema? And at the end of the day, how much does one ticket cost? 2,000 naira? How many 2,000 naira tickets are you going to sell to replace the air conditioners, the 4D screens, go to 5D screens? It's massive. So these are the economics of the industry that make it difficult to actually carry the small businesses in a manner that is cost effective.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Dickey started very well by saying from a commercial banker's perspective, because I have to say if I if I sat there listening, I would just go home, and it paints quite a hard, dark picture of the industry. Real, it's very real, but dark. But I think it's important to also highlight some of the. So first of all, there are cinemas that make money, profits. They make good money, and yes, it's very expensive to run, and it's very expensive to set up. But sometimes my opinion of this industry is that this industry doesn't need handouts; it needs opportunity. It doesn't need government's free money; it needs conducive environment. So what it needs is maybe rightfully it doesn't at this stage need a lot of commercial bank perspective on it. My opinion of this industry doesn't need handouts, conducive environment. So what it needs is maybe rightfully it doesn't at this stage need a lot of commercial bank perspective on it. It needs more of, and I think which is what we alluded to a little bit earlier, was what the Bank of Industry is doing. But like you said, we need more banks of industries, and we need more of that. But I also need also varies, whether it be FIM or it be infrastructure. And I think that sometimes it could be unfair to view the financing of FIM in the same manner in which you view the financing. Mentioned here more, we have it, as I'm sure Madam Mucho will also, the debt profiles of it varies. And so I think also as businessmen or women, we need to be a little bit more open to different funding structures for your business. There needs to be a willingness to be open to innovative ways of finding financing. And just to sum up a little bit about your point as well is, I think this industry also suffers from a lack of structure. Because sometimes what professionals are looking for is to give them confidence. And even if that confidence isn't in the product, sometimes they want to be able to invest in you. And so sometimes they're looking for structure or the demonstration of structure in your business. Sometimes you have film producers or even companies that come to you with little or no structure, wanting you to take bets on them, without some clarity as to the way in which their money comes back. And so one of the things that I would say is that whilst we're continuing to talk about funding and the types of funding we need, I think we should also spend a little bit of time talking about the structures that the film industry has, and there needs to also be an acceptance as to where the industry is today. I think sometimes it can be unfair to sit with financiers, and financiers have an expectation of the industry that quite frankly isn't there. This industry is self-made. A lot of them are individuals that built the industry, on their own, whether it be from friends and family or from savings. And so the structure doesn't exist because they don't care about structure. The structure doesn't exist because they haven't necessarily needed the structure to survive for as long as they've survived. And I think that really was the attitude that the Bank of Industry had with us when we started. It was really about an investment in, this set of guys who were very passionate and very competent, and they took a bet that it would work. And I think without structures like that, or without innovative bankers like that, largely about 60% of the industry wouldn't exist today.
Well said, Kenneth. Now, and I'm going to throw it open to the crowd. And I know BB has something to say. BB, you will still talk. You will still talk. But I'm going to throw it open to the audience, but you will still all get a chance to give closing remarks and you will say what you wanted to say. But please, if you have any questions, someone, oh,
Thank you very much for this opportunity. First of all, I want to thank Bibi very much for being a very good representation what of what the producer's experience is. Prior to this era, we had a regular sparring partner in back of industry before this present era. Whenever we had, forums like this, we used to have heated back and forth. And what we always emphasized on is what he espoused on about the banking sector not taking the pains to study and understand how the industry works. Because generally what happens is that our banking sector depends on free opportunity to invest and make quick money. I always refer to it as round tripping. Not in the sense that it is known criminally, but in the sense that they look for succeeding businesses to give monies to. No work. But thank God that we have moved a step further with Bank of Industry with what they did. Though it still has its commas, because you're understanding the industry as a film making industry with films made that go through cinemas. There is more that happens outside the cinemas. The industry did not start as a cinema industry. It was basically TV. It expanded as a TV industry. Cinema is just beginning to, come, and that's because we desire to move to the next level. And we believe that the strongest pillar on which the next move will, be hinged on is cinemas for it to become truly international. But then, it has not stopped the growth of the expansion of the TV industry. Because you ask yourself, prior to Nollywood, as the fad we know today, people were making films that were shown in cinemas, sponsored or financed by agencies that just give money for arty films to be made. Nobody looks forward to making any money from it. At the point it became a commercial industry was when we started making our videos. TV transformed, like what the history that Charles gave. TV transformed into the home videos and what we have today. Now, the question is, who has actually looked into the TV sector? If from the small nuclear industry we expanded, and we are still expanding, the question is, where is the money coming from for the expansion? How is the expansion enabled? It means that people are making profit. If individuals were to tell you their personal, there are some individual practitioners who have choice properties that they own, that they made money from this industry to acquire. So how do you aggregate the successes of the individuals to become a common industry and a structure that can be recognized by the banks for financing? Even when BOI made their contributions to the industry, it was so much money going to a few people. The Nollywood industry is a mass market. It's a mass market. A lot of people operating at the same time, making so much profit in aggregation. Not one or two or three or four people spending so much money on projects that immediately you cannot guarantee return on investment. Let me just end at that point, because I might go on.
I'm sorry, moderator, can I say something, please?
Please, Uche, I've noted this question. You'll answer.
I may not remember so many things. Let me just quickly address
30
this,
seconds.
please.
30
Yes,
seconds.
yes. We have a content department, not film department. We have funding windows, collateralized funding and non-collateralized funding, and it's for content, not for film. It's been there since you've never visited us. You've never had a one-on-one discussion. So
Thank
you are
you.
just believing what
Thank
you've
you.
heard. That's what we have. Upper
No.
is behind you.
Knowledge
We
is power.
started, sorry, we introduced Nolly Fund as a film support project because the likes of Gaboski, the likes of Chris Ekejimbe, and who again came to meet. Yeah, what's your name again? Sorry, Mike Achima. They came around to say, okay, can we create a special product without collateral? Because I received about 287 applications. Review, and you meet with these people, and they are not able to come back again to discuss. The first approval, the first application I received, and I was able to run same day, was the application I received from Film House. I left them in my office and went straight to my MD. I'm not supposed to go to the MD. I'm supposed to receive the application, respond to them, then prepare my proposal. But I left immediately because I had everything to make presentation. And they felt I was crazy. I left my MD's office and I went straight to Mr. Wahid Olagunju, who understands the industry also. I didn't go straight to my immediate bosses. So there's no special product for film, or we have we don't have special likeness for film, or we have a department for content. Those in the TV arm of content would come to us. We've supported Lufudo, please excuse me. We've supported Joker Silva, and that was stage drama. Terra Culture, it's also stage. So we're there. Just come to Bank of Industry. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think it's more of so just one thing that we need to pick up from here, because I've also found out that the way you present your business plans, the way you present your case to the bankers, to the financiers, to the investors, it's really important. I know Kenneth has sent me some business plans before, and when I question one or two things, he actually has to go back to the producers and say, these things that are not clear, the points I'm talking about. So it's also really important that we actually invest a bit more time in, gathering enough data if we want to go and make this kind of presentations. Please, I'm gonna take only 3 additional questions. 3 additional questions. The gentleman over there. Okay, I'm going to take 4 since I have 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll save the best for last. Only 4. Please, you have 20 seconds to ask your question. Yes, sir.
It starts from when I hold the microphone. All right. This question is to Uche. I understand that BOI, you've done great. You've really moved the industry forward. But the issue of BG, you say you don't need collaterals, but when people who are into content production like us for TV approaches you, you request BG, and then we go to the banks, and then the bank says, look, this is like we are giving you the loan. It's no longer BOI, because what we're doing here is like, if you don't pay, we will pay. So we're going to now do our due diligence. And then I say, and I ask you, please, who actually gives that money out? Is it the banks that you're requesting the BG from, or is it BOI?
Just my own is not really a question, but what I want to say is that the film industry, the Nigerian film industry, actually, people does not need banks to finance the side. The problem we have in this industry is that everybody is looking at BOI. BOI is national. State governments with film commissions can actually do more than BOI. But state governments, I don't know. Lagos state government can actually do more than BOI, but they take all the credit, but I don't know what they've contributed. State governments with film commissions can actually do more. Thank you.
The first question to the gentleman from the bank, Heritage Bank, right? So what happened to Smiths? I mean, there's a fund that was set up many years ago, Small and Medium Enterprise Investment Scheme. Is it dead? I mean, that's supposed to be a risk funding for SMEs. Then secondly, to the cinema guys, I couldn't ask that question when you're doing the cinema. Can there be a kind of retail-driven
investment opportunities for cinemas, because this whole experience, I mean, if you go to, I mean, most countries in the world, it's always about retail. People come for shopping, and after shopping, they want to watch a movie or something. Is there a way that, I don't know, who can facilitate that? Maybe Pricewaterhouse or something that can do a consortium of retail-driven finance for cinema?
Okay, my question and a question and anytime we go to DK. Is it DK? Yes. As you speak, sir, you contradict yourself so much. So much. First, SME, and you say we're not SME, and people feel bad about SMEs. My question, my position or my view towards you now as HB is that you don't understand why you're here. That you don't understand the industry. Because just like what Bibi said, you can go ahead. I think you look at industry as a buy and sell thing. Okay, I think I was talking to him, not you. I think, sir, you need to understand the industry. Go back and understand the industry. Just like what Bibi said. If you can consolidate yourselves and make a long-term loan for different industries, somebody comes want to build a bridge, and you know he's going to get his money to the toll, and you still finance that person, and you come and you tell me, I'm in the film industry, you don't understand me because I'm too risky. What is more risky than a bridge? Sir, what is more risky than importing diesel and salt that will sink? So I think, sir, with due honest and responsibility, come to us, ask us what we do, just like what Madam BOI said. She went, she asked, and she formed. Come, let's talk. Let's form. Thank you.
That's 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Madam Muche, this is for you. If BOI gives somebody a loan to produce a film, why, is a loan, why do you insist on where they want to get their equipment and all that? If you give me the loan, why don't you allow me to source my equipment? What if I have equipment? Thank you.
So, Uche, you have 2 questions. Can you answer this one first?
Yeah, let me take the last one. I don't know if Jade is still here. Oh, Jade is not here now. Like I said, we have 2 funding windows, collateralized and non-collateralized. Jade is not here. I gave her fund. She gave me collateral, and I credited her account. So she chose the studio she wanted to go to. But Nolly Fund is a special product. Remember, BOI is also guided by CBN rules. You can't give out people's money without having collateral to back it. So we looked at creative ways to even convince CBN to approve this special product called Nolly Fund. How did we go about it? They were looking at, what is a piece of paper, the storyline, and you're saying that is collateral. We couldn't quantify intellectual property. We couldn't place a lien on it. But we were able to work with the cinemas to say, okay, this is how they make their money. This is their bank account. This is what we'll be expecting into their account. And we had a lien on that account. So that special product, the only way we could get approval to have it in the market was to create what we call near collateral. That was why we funded 4 studios. I said, okay, if we have to give you funding for this line of finance, go to any of the studios. Or if you come to non-collateralized funding, you're free to go use any equipment you want to use. That was why I mentioned Jade.
Sorry, collateralized funding. Collateralized
Yes,
funding.
collateralized, yes, you go anywhere.
Talk about the bank guarantees. 20 seconds.
It's still around collateral.
Collateral.
BOI will disburse the money to your account in that bank that will give you the bank guarantee.
Absolutely. Okay. So the other question for Ope and Kenneth is retail-driven investment opportunities for cinemas. Really and truly, if you think about it, retail and cinemas kind of work together. Can you talk 20 seconds each on that?
Okay, so I think for us, if I understand the question correctly, all our 9 locations are in malls, which is really the essence, and that was deliberate because when you start building your cinemas, you're in a completely different business. You're not necessarily in cinemas. It's more of a real estate play. Okay, so for us, we took a strategic decision to say that all our cinemas will be in malls. Even the one that we have in our own property is run as a completely different business. Okay, because that's just the discipline that we have as a group. So yes, there's benefits to retail. The whole essence of the mall is that you benefit from each other's traffic. Okay, so I think we're already doing that.
Yeah, so we're not disciplined as Genesis, but I think I concur with Okwe's point about it already semi exists where we leverage on malls, and I mean, so we have a little bit more of a diverse mix. We have cinemas that are within malls. We have standalones. We also played a little bit in real estate where we built our own cinema completely from greenfield, and so the complexity of working in both dynamics also plays its role in retail. But I think I'd agree with but it already semi-exists within some of the infrastructure that we're already playing, where we work as a retail, the retail component is an integral part of the funding mix.
Okay, thanks. So closing thoughts from everybody, starting with Bibi.
So first, again, thank everybody for taking the time to listen. I do think it's important because we've thrown some shots back and forth, and this is what happens. Filmmakers are passionate. Whenever you put together a panel of people they think that we can blame for our losses, we will blame you for our losses. It's who we are. But to that effect, I do want to say, I've thrown shots at Chijioke in PwC, but he's a personal investor in our new film, God Calling. So yeah, it does deserve a round of applause. There are people doing things. I know Heritage Bank spends a lot of money sponsoring, and that's the way they understand as bankers, as commercial banks, to be able to support the industry. So that in its own right deserves its own round of applause and its own kudos and things like that. And there's no limit to the amount of, BOI is doing stuff that's just not been done before, period. Like, so many people have been funded from BOI. So, Madam Uche, thank you so much. A bit naive, and my